Good morning, and a blessed Good Friday to all of you. Father John Wilson here. Want to spend this Good Friday morning just giving one final word about the wisdom of the cross. Why it was that our God sent His Son to die on the cross for us. And that final word is that the cross of Jesus Christ restores true worship. And to understand why this is, it's worthwhile to go all the way back to the beginning. Again, we've been talking a lot about Adam and Eve as we've explored the wisdom of the cross. And, you know, a question that people have a lot about the Genesis story is, well, okay, so Adam and Eve sinned by eating the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of God and evil, but why was that tree there in the first place? Why did God put it there? Was He just setting them up to fail? And, you know, we might say, well, He wanted to test them, but, you know, someone else might say, well, how is that true love? True love doesn't set traps for people. So I think it's a hard image for people to wrap their mind around sometimes. But I want to give us a completely different way of thinking about it. Okay? That tree of the knowledge of good and evil. I want you to think about it as like the first ever tabernacle. All right? You know, you walk into a church, right? What's the first thing you look for? You look for the tabernacle, the place of Jesus' Eucharistic presence, and it's a place that's set apart, right? It's an area that's reserved for God. You know, you're not going to walk up and just start banging on the tabernacle door or something like that. No, it's a consecrated area. It's set apart for Him, and you know. We don't resent that, right? We don't say, oh no, I wish I could be in the tabernacle. No, we're grateful that it's consecrated to God because it gives a focus to our worship. And that's exactly what this tree of the knowledge of good and evil and this command not to eat the fruit of the tree, that's what that was. It wasn't just a test for our first parents. It was God was giving them an opportunity to worship. You know, that they actually had a place in their garden, in their physical existence that was set apart for God. And at least before they sinned, before they were tempted, before their perspective was twisted, they didn't experience that as God like teasing them. No, they would have delighted to see that tree. Because it would have been a reminder of God and of His goodness for them. And that simply by obeying His command, simply by worshiping God at the sight of that tree instead of touching it, they would have rendered God perfect worship. They would have given Him the love of their hearts based on the truth of who He is and the truth of who they are. You know, God is God and I'm not, and that's awesome. You know, look at everything He's given me. And, you know, it was the undoing of that simple, true love, that perfect worship, that was the most tragic consequence of their sin. That's what the fall of our first parents did to us. Our worship was twisted. You know, like even the fact that we would wonder, looking back on that story, well, like, was God just trying to trap them? You know, that shows kind of our sorry state, right? You know, we think about God so often, we're suspicious, we're self-seeking, we're distracted, we doubt. And those thoughts can creep into our mind even for those of us who know Him, who know His love. And if you look at even more so just the history of world religion. There's some dark stuff there as we, from our depths of sin, humanity tries to figure out what's up there and cut a deal with it. That's the human instinct to worship. But it's not true worship. It's not worship that's pleasing to God. Yeah. Now, we notice in the history of God's people, right, he intervened almost right away to start to bring them back to true worship. This is when he asked for very specific kinds of worship, very specific sacrifices in the Old Testament. And to give those commands was a sort of a reintroduction of right order, right? Because it gave his people an opportunity for obedience. When they made sacrifices, that was an acknowledgement of their own sin. But like sacrificing bulls and goats and lambs, could not restore them to the simplicity and purity of heart that our first parents lost. No, there wasn't perfect worship until Jesus Christ, until the cross. Jesus Christ was one of us, and yet his sacrifice on the cross was perfect, loving obedience. So that the cross of Jesus Christ is the new tree, but it's even greater. And it's even greater because, he wasn't in the Garden of Eden, right? He offered perfect love to the Father, even as he was bearing the full weight of human sin. It's amazing. And it's the kind of worship that is pleasing to God. It's the kind of worship that restores us to his friendship. That's the worship that God invites us into. That's the worship that's the substance of the Christian life. See, when we're at the foot of the cross, we are rendering to God a worship that is perfectly pleasing to him. Because Jesus is loving and honoring his Father in us and through us. So let's stay at the cross. Let's stay at the cross, especially today. This is how much God loves us. God bless you all, and a blessed Good Friday.